There's no other way to say it. I like Starfield. I like Star Wars Outlaws. I know. Just wait until I tell you that I like Concord as well, but that's not making the script now, is it? So.
Boo! You stink!
My point to all this is that there's a pattern, and that pattern is space games that people don't like, but I do. You've read the title, you're here, so allow me a few moments of your time while I grab your undivided attention. You remember No Man's Sky, the game that launched in 2016 to very high expectations, lots of promises, and a whole universe of possibilities, and instead we got this.
Boo! You stink!
The thing is, I loved this. I played it so much, just enjoying the simplicity of exploration, gathering some minerals and flying from planet to planet. I even platinumed it in this state. It certainly wasn't what was promised, and there's no denying that, but I've stuck with the game through all these years to the incredible and still ongoing point it's at now. But back then I felt alone, both in a vast universe, but also in this universe as a No Man's Sky fan. It's a strange feeling, and people will often think you're playing something just to be different, or to be the one to say, oh, I actually like it, and it's not that. But then even I would convince myself of stuff like that, thinking I'm just super easy to please, which is probably true, I just like video games, or that I'm coping and wanting to like it so much that I do like it. But that's just it. I actually did love it. Even if it didn't evolve the way it did, it would have remained in my good books as a game that I was fond of and thought of in a good light. Little did I know that this would be the start of a pattern that wouldn't pick back up for another 7 years or so. And no, I'm not talking about Star Citizen. I'm not getting involved in that money sink until it's a complete game. If that ever happens. No, I'm talking about Starfield. A game that came out in 2023 after high expectations following the studio's history of The Elder Scrolls and Fallout, but not too high expectations because of Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, but that's a conversation for another time. I'll be honest, I was very cautious. I was into the idea once it was announced with a title screen, and then as the years passed with no real news or proper looks, my expectations began to turn into skepticism. I started to think that it might be something like Fallout 76 or something that wouldn't appeal to me, or would be outdone by another game by the time it actually released. But then we got a deep dive from the big boy himself, and suddenly I was back in. Contrasting to the arcade-esque old-school science fiction novel style that No Man's Sky was going for, Starfield looked more grounded in realism. A fiction within our own future, with NASA punk aesthetic, which I still don't quite understand what that means, but at the same time it makes perfect sense. Right? It felt like the perfect pairing to No Man's Sky for me. The other end of the sci-fi spectrum that had a lot to offer, with the colossal Bethesda Game Studios at the helm. The thing is, it didn't launch to the level of popularity that a game like Skyrim has, and was it ever going to? No. Of course not. It did score high reviews, but it soon trickled down to a much smaller community of people that enjoyed it. Well, small by Bethesda standards anyway, while the masses would constantly pick at it, demand The Elder Scrolls 6 instead, or just shut it all down. It's completely fair to not like Starfield, and I can certainly see why it has nowhere near as widespread an appeal as The Elder Scrolls or even Fallout, but I think a lot of the criticism is lost behind those rose-tinted glasses, to a degree. A big criticism is that Bethesda has not evolved their formula or gameplay, and yeah, I agree that it hasn't come as far as it could have in the almost decade since Fallout 4. But it's still one small step forward, and a giant leap for the future of the game. Recently, Bethesda's lead writer even said that they believed Starfield is the best game Bethesda Game Studios has ever made, and honestly, that's completely true. Technically. Now put those steel swords and fat mans down for just a minute and hear me out. I'm not saying you have to like this game, or even that it does everything better than Skyrim and Fallout 4. I'm not even saying that there aren't improvements to be made on Starfield. I have my own long list of I wish features and tweaks. Trust me. But when looking at the steps Bethesda has made, from gameplay improvements to graphical accomplishments, it's just something special from a technical standpoint when comparing it to their previous works. Even to some of the quest design. I'm happy enough with the main story, but the best quests in Starfield are so many of the side missions that you'll get caught up in. And the same can be said for Skyrim, to be honest. But look, I'm not going to convince you, and that's okay. I understand the criticisms as much as anything, and I do think this game is very suited to me, more so than the many, which is a shame because so many people were waiting for Bethesda's next game for so long. I really do hope that The Elder Scrolls 6 can incorporate some of the accomplishments from Starfield while making sure to bring more of those fans back in with something truly special. So then we skip forwards a year to the next space game everyone hates, Star Wars Outlaws. Now look, I'm not going to even begin to praise Ubisoft. There are many issues, and this is a game that is much less justifiable than Starfield. I don't even think that it's a great game. It's just good, but I enjoyed it, even going so far as to get the platinum. But why? I don't know. I think I just took it for what it was, enjoyed a very basic open world game that finally gave us some separation from the Jedi. I love you, Cal Kestis, but we needed something else too. And for that, I was grateful. But it's not great. There's no denying that. It's janky, it's glitchy, it's much less polished than it should be from a company that claimed their latest subpar pirate game was quadruple A, especially with a property as big as Star Wars. But I couldn't help but enjoy it, enjoy the characters, and have fun exploring these grittier corners of the galaxy. And once again, I felt alone in my enjoyment. Now, Star Wars Outlaws is set to get some big overhauling updates in the future, with talk recently about removing almost all of the required stealth segments. And honestly, I'm immensely excited, not only because I'd love to see more people get the chance to enjoy this game in a better state, but also because I'd love to revisit this game and see it reach beyond just being a baseline of good. Maybe this space game will become one that people like in the same way that No Man's Sky managed to evolve over time and has now overshadowed any of the criticisms that people can throw, and instead has a dedicated community following along with every step of the journey. Now, Outlaws won't become that beloved, but just enjoyed by more people will do fine. So now I can't help but wonder, what's the next space game gonna be? We seem to have a pattern of getting them every so often, and I always end up enjoying them to some extent while the internet hates on them. Which is really strange because the internet is not a hateful place in the slightest. But hey, maybe I'll be back here to rant about whatever the next one is. Now, go ahead, jump down into the comments and tell me how bad these games are, and that I'm a sellout or something like that. Or if you're up for it, I'd love to hear what you actually like about these games. And Concord? Let's not talk about Concord today.